All right, hi guys. Welcome back. I'm just going to be going through some more asks here today. We'll start with this one. A little headcanon. I've always had when Bethyl reunite and catch up. Beth holds Daryl's left hand while she swipes her thumb across his skin. She feels a scar, oblivious that he had put out his cigarette on that spot all those years ago. She knows he has scars before and after the world went to shit, but it's just one almost perfect circle on his hand of all places. So she asks him where he got it. Daryl looks at her with his eyes reflecting the memory of the place he was in when he burned himself. The pain of losing you, I just wanted to feel something else. I didn't know. I didn't feel that smoke get put out on my hand because nothing else could one up what I felt losing you. Obviously, this probably won't happen exactly like this if they even plan to mention that scene after she comes back and they finally have their damn romance novel play out. But I really just want them to mention it and explain why Daryl did it. I mean, we, TDers and Bethyl shippers, all know why he did. I'm more so referring to the idiots that didn't understand what was happening, even though it was obvious. I've seen enough reactions on YouTube to conclude that scene went over almost everyone's head. But anyways, I think that scene was really overlooked considering how pivotal it was. It was so important. It practically confirmed that Daryl had fallen in love with Beth. Also, am I the only one who remembers a review after that episode came out saying the same thing? It went along the lines of Daryl had indeed fallen in love with Beth. I haven't seen it in years, and I'd really like to take a look at it again. If someone finds it, please link or please let me know. I think that review got a lot of hate though, so who knows if it's still around. And I really want to see Daryl giving Beth's knife back to her, confirming that he had kept it after all this time. I have no idea where the knife is now, but I'd love to see it again. I just miss Beth so much, and I want to see her on my screen again so badly. I've been waiting since Coda. And if I miss her this much, I can't imagine how Daryl must feel. Points to that scene of Daryl watching Mork and Mindy, depression hitting him all of a sudden. Beth did call it, though. You're going to miss me so bad when I'm gone, Daryl Dixon. Only when Beth finds out that Daryl self-harmed after she died, um, will she fully realize how right she was. And I'll end this off with another little headcanon I have since I'm now fully convinced Beth suffers from memory loss. Who was I to you? Immediately, everything. You were everything to me. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. I love all of this. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do address and what they don't address, and obviously we want them to address everything in great detail. I do think it might be a long time coming, though. Like they might have to cover a lot of story before they can even have this conversation. But hopefully, sooner rather than later. So I really like this. Seemed like I was going to address something. Oh, yeah. I was going to say that even though it seems like that scene went over everyone's head, and I'm sure it went over a few people's heads, I actually think that it went over fewer heads than you are thinking. I think the people who posted about it, who did the most reactions about it, were people who didn't like the idea of Beth and Daryl, who didn't want um, that to happen. So they basically just ignored it and pretended that they didn't think it was about his grief for Beth because they didn't want it to be. You know what I mean? I think most of the reactions you saw were that. Like I remember reading one that actually made me laugh because it was so absurd, but it just basically said, no, and this was very on the nose, like they weren't ignoring it, they were just denying, like obviously outwardly denying that it was about Beth. And they said, no, he wasn't crying because Beth died. He was crying because he burned himself with a cigarette, you know? And I started laughing and I was just going, I mean, obviously they're being a little bit like they're trying to be funny there, right? And probably a lot of TDers at the time wouldn't have thought that was very funny, but that's what I mean. Like they're more in denial than it's going over their head, in my opinion. As though Daryl would ever start crying because he hurt himself. He gets hurt all the time, you know? So kind of absurd, but that particular person was trying to be absurd and was trying to be funny. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I think that a lot of the, YouTube reactions that you're seeing, they're just ignoring it because they don't want that to be the case. So they just go, "Oh yeah, that was sad." Anyway, you know what I mean? And they just don't want to mention her because they didn't like the idea of him being in love with her, and they're just going to have to deal with it when she finally shows up again. Okay. I don't remember a specific review that said Daryl had indeed fallen in love with Beth, but at the same time, I kind of do because it seemed like there was a lot of stuff back then that said that, but it was also really hard to, at the time, because we didn't know as much as we do now about the kinds of things that the powers that be would put out there for the different sites, so it was a little bit hard to disentangle what was coming from more official channels and what was fan based. So I'm not sure about this particular review or article or whatever it was. If it was from one of the main sites like comicbook.com or something, or one of those similar online sites, review sites, then yeah, I would definitely think that it came from the powers that be. And as I always say, it's so funny that they don't go out of their way to say that more because it would be more tragic that way. So even when, you know, they say, oh, like someone asks, okay, was Daryl in love with Beth? And they say, oh, well, if he had feelings for her, he didn't really understand them. And it's like, okay, why don't you just say yes? Because that would make it way more tragic that he lost her. So why are they dancing around this? They don't need to worry about pissing off fans. If she's really dead, she's not coming back. What would the point be? So the only reason I can think for them to do that is that they're hinting at things that are still ongoing right now. By saying that, they're really telling us where Daryl was back then, that he was not romantically experienced, and obviously he's come a long way since then. So they're just hinting at his arc, but they're definitely not saying no to the question, right? So yeah, anyway, thank you for sharing this. This was really lovely, and I love your headcanons. Let's put it that way. Here's hoping that all of this gets seen in some iteration on screen eventually. All right. Again, LOL. Okay. I know that I have touched on this before in submissions and asks, but it is often so in your face, LOL, that I feel I should revisit. I'm referring to the constant barrage of Bethyl and Beth related posts on social media. I follow many, maybe over 2 dozen TWD pages, and there are constant posts like this. What about Glenn Maggie or Michonne Rick, the flagship romances of the series? Next to zero, zilch, nothing. I recently came upon a Facebook page entitled Classic Hits. However, the page is entirely TWD and spin-offs, but primarily the original show. I came upon a pic only, not an article attached, which is a pic of a little boy resembling and dressed like Daryl with the caption, Daryl Dixon will have a son in TWD's newest chapter, question mark. Guess who the mother is? At first I'm thinking, yeah, another clickbait site, but then I get to looking, and this page actually has a lot of legit articles, such as one describing special classes and training the makeup people take to make up the walkers. Pretty interesting. Even more interesting is in the about page info, it lists a phone number, which I Googled. It's a landline, and it brings up an address in Las Vegas, Nevada. Per Google Earth, the address could be really plain industrial looking apartments or plain drab offices, but it does appear to be in the business district. Very odd. I know that the majority of these pages and social media sites have no connection whatever to AMC, etc. I also Googled the title of the caption, and I don't bring up anything except this picture on the Classic Hits Facebook page. So I guess my two questions are, one, why the constant Bethyl and Beth promotion after so long after we hear death? Are there really that many Bethelers out there? And two, what does all of this content come from, especially since the Daryl's son-child thing seems to be exclusive to that specific page? Would love to hear your thoughts. Hope your summer is going well so far. It is. Thank you. Yeah, this is interesting. I will say that even if they have a lot of legit articles, they might still be peppering in some that are just conjecture. We do know that at some point they put out a casting call for like a young Daryl Dixon, and so people have been thinking they might do flashbacks to his childhood. And I'm that's what this made me think of when you say Daryl Dixon will have a son. It could just be conjecture that they, because they were asking for a young looking Daryl Dixon, that maybe it's because he's going to have a kid or something. But to me, that also just sounds like a lot of conjecture. So I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. Where they're getting this from, if it could correlate with something that's real, I have no idea. But it's interesting to think about. As to all of the Beth and Bethyl promotion, yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. And it's what I always say. There's a lot of characters who have been killed off on the show, and every once in a while, they'll get some promotion. They'll come out with a new game that will include some of the deceased characters, or a new, action figure or something like that. But it's not very often. Once a year, if that. There are plenty of characters who were pretty big back in the day that never get mentioned anymore. And I mean, it just doesn't seem logical to me you understand why they would be posting about Daryl and Daryl's arc because he's still in the show, he has the spinoff, he's still very relevant, all of that. But why post him with Beth? Why not do more Daryl and Carol posts if it's the two of them? And you know, of course, I don't want them to do that, and I don't mean in a relate or a romance sort of way, but just because you would think they would be promoting what's happening on the show, which is Daryl and Carol backpacking across Europe, right? But we don't even see as much of that. We see so much of him and Beth. And why would they do that if she's not relevant anymore? Why don't we see Daryl and Jesus or Daryl and Aaron, even though they're not together in the same place on the show anymore? They're buddies, right? They're besties. Why not? You know, why not more Daryl and Rick? Why not more Daryl and Andrea? Why not more Daryl and Glenn? You know, exactly. Like, why is this the only thing we're seeing? There has to be a reason for it. And we know they're very strategic in their social media game. So they're setting us up for something that's going to be relevant. That's what my thought about it is. That's why they keep doing this. That's why over the years, we've seen so much Beth promotion, Beth merchandise, Emily continually. It seems like at least 2 or 3 times a year, they do something big that includes Beth. And yes, in some of those, they have included other characters as well, but just not there's no other, you know, quote unquote deceased character that has gotten as much attention as she has. And there's no reason for it unless she continues to be relevant. And granted, in all of those, you know, times that that happened, we tended to jump on it and be like, oh, this means she's coming back. And then she didn't come back that season. But I think they were just doing 2 or 3 or more things each year to keep her in the audience's memory so that they wouldn't completely forget her because it took so many years to get to the point where they could bring her back, you know? So those would be my thoughts. And yeah, as long as they keep doing this and promoting her and she keeps randomly showing up at these cons and doing super suspicious things like she did at the Atlanta con recently, my opinion about that's not going to change. You know, it's clear that this is leading somewhere. We're just waiting to see where it actually leads. So thank you for sending that in. Very interesting. I'm just going to drop this here for your thoughts. This is a still promo shot from Daryl Dixon season 3. That's got to be Daryl on a horse, right? Hopefully this horse sticks around. Buttons part 2 coming our way. Yeah, we're not sure who this is. It could be him, and it looks like him from the back for sure. But I don't know. I almost don't want to commit to this being Daryl because it's specifically not showing his face. And I don't know, the hat isn't really him that much either, but it does kind of look like a sheriff's hat, and he is riding a horse. So I think the buttons 2.0 thing is interesting. But what I'm thinking here is if it is Daryl, then okay, makes sense. And we're going to have lots of symbolism to analyze. Not only is he on a horse, not only is he wearing a sheriff's hat, he's also walking along some train tracks. Like, yeah, there's a lot here, right? But if it isn't him, I almost feel like this is going to be someone villainous that is being foiled with Daryl in some way, which means he's going to look a lot like Daryl. Not so much that we would like look at him and think he was Norman's twin brother or anything. I mean, there's a reason they're not showing this person's face. But just that he will have a lot of similarities to Daryl, right? So I don't know. I'm actually really interested to see what this scene is and who this is because it's really hard to tell for sure if it's Daryl or not. But and I don't like I said, I don't even really care whether it is or not because either way, there's going to be a lot of symbolism. So I'm just interested to see which one it is. And I also think that there's a very good chance because this was in the been in several of the trailers, right, and the teasers. I think there's a good chance that it really might be like a 3-second scene that isn't going to seem all that significant in the show, but just because it's been in the trailers, it feels like it's a big thing, you know. But either way, even if it's not a very significant scene in the plot, it's still been put in there for a reason. It was still put in the trailers for a reason, and most of that reason is symbolic. So yeah, thanks for sending that in. I haven't actually analyzed this in quite a long time. All right, next one. So this isn't specifically Beth related, but the showrunner of Dead City has been replaced. I did see that, and I haven't been able to look into it much. His replacement for season 3 is Seth Hoffman. It's an interesting choice because he wrote several episodes of TWD seasons 4, 5, and 6. He hasn't been involved in the TWD universe since then, and now they've given him the reins of Dead City. I find it interesting because if there always was this long-term arc planned for Beth based on when he was in the writer's room, he likely is one of the people that knows about it. He was also involved in writing the Grady storyline. He wrote the following episodes: Too Far Gone, Claimed, Self-Help, Crossed, The Distance, Conquer, JSS, No Way Out, Not Tomorrow Yet. super excited about this because not only are all of those solid episodes, but yeah, I can't help but hope he's going to throw a bunch of callbacks and symbolism at us since he was involved in all of that way back when this started. Or maybe there's more overt reasons that they want a showrunner who was around during Beth's storyline. That might be a dream too far, though. Haha. No, you know what? That is actually exactly what I was thinking. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Yeah, so where I heard this was WD Way sent me it's one of those um spin-off Facebook articles, right? And this is what I wrote about it. Um so part of it was an interview with Norman, and it sounded a little bit like he was using talking points, so that's kind of what I reference at first here. Um and he kept saying, I don't know, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, we know he knows everything. So it was kind of suspicious. But anyway, here's the line I just wanted to show you. I said it was interesting that Dead City season 3 showrunner worked on the flagship show during 4, 5, and 6. And the article even went out of its way to mention some of the best episodes of the flagship. So this is what it said. It mentioned the showrunner and then said, like the new showrunner that you're talking about, and then said he worked basically on some of the best episodes of the flagship season, the flagship show. And obviously that's totally subjective. Everyone has their own opinions about which are the best episodes, but to me that was a blinking light reference to the most watched episodes, which was during season 5 when everyone wanted to see if Daryl found Beth. I mean, honestly, guys, Coda was one of the most watched episodes of the entire series. Not the most watched, but it was pretty far up there. And it was because everybody wanted to see what was going to happen, right? And so because of that, a lot of people watched Beth get shot and a lot of people remember it, right? So no, I mean, I actually completely agree with you that this is interesting that they're giving it to this showrunner because he was around during these pivotal episodes. I mean, about the only, really heavy Beth episodes that he worked on were, possibly Too Far Gone, which was an Everybody episode, and Crossed, which had some Grady in it. But a lot of these are really heavy foreshadowing episodes and really heavy um, symbolism episodes. So I think that that's really important. And yeah, I totally agree with you. This is really interesting that they are giving the reins of Dead City to someone who is kind of an OG director and knows the early seasons of the show really, really well. That is really interesting. So it'll be fun to see where they take that. Thanks for sending that in. Okay, I could be reaching here, but Norman Reedus just launched a DDS3 sneak peek on his Insta story, and part of that is Melissa McBride saying that Daryl and Carol have nothing to lose except each other. And then she makes this face, kind of like she's saying, or is there more to lose? Could this be about Beth, or am I too far down the delusional rabbit hole? As far as I'm concerned, everything could be about Beth. So if you're too far down the rabbit hole, so am I. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And the funny thing is that they always have more to lose. I mean, even if you weren't talking about Beth and you were just talking about Daryl and Carol, they still have each other to lose, and that would be really devastating for either one of them. So you probably shouldn't go around saying you don't have anything else to lose because you're just inviting more loss when you say that. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they are putting that in, what is basically a promo for the show, they're hinting at things, right? They wouldn't be using that particular scene unless there was a reason for it. And it's the kind of thing that you could easily explain away. Oh, they're just, showing that there's going to be drama, that one of them is going to lose something. Yeah, maybe. But still, I definitely read into all of their promos because we have seen promos in the past that always lead to this sort of thing that kind of lead the audience toward where they want us to go. And so yeah, I always look into the promos and what's being posted for sure. So I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that. You said his Insta story. I'm a little behind here, so it honestly is probably not there anymore. But hopefully we'll see it again in another promo if it's not. So thanks for sending that in. All right, I'm a little over time here, guys. That's it for today, and we're heading into San Diego Comic-Con, so hopefully some really good stuff come out of there. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.